This video is pretty much a test flight of my old Phantom 3 Standard. It's been years since I actually gave this thing a very good flight. Now, there was nothing really wrong with it because I have fixed it over the years and stuff where I had to replace the shell a couple times. I had to replace one of the landing gears, the flex cable once on the camera and stuff over the years. But the reason why I had to replace the actual shell and stuff like this because these are very well known to crack right around the motor mounts and stuff like that. And it cracked a couple of times on there, so I ended up doing a whole shell replacement. But when I did the second shell this time around, I actually installed these reinforcements essentially and stuff. And here, I'll go and show you one of them right here. And that essentially reinforces the motor mounts. And I also went ahead and actually added a special plastic epoxy that's very good and stuff like that around the motor mounts and stuff to kind of fix the design flaw on the inside and so forth around where they typically crack and stuff. So this bird, it's 100% functional. There's really nothing wrong with it. And of course, over the years, I also added that gimbal guard thing to protect the gimbal and so forth. But the main reason why I took it for a test flight because I did treat it to a brand new battery, and I kind of wanted to test the flight time on this battery and so forth. And it did pretty good actually. I was able to get a little over 18 minutes of flight time, and that was considering that the battery was only charged to 93% and still 21% when I landed it. It's so far, so it did pretty good. It does what it's supposed to. It is the rated capacity and stuff like that. Kind of just pretty much see how much, on a timer, essentially, flight time I get. And then, of course, depending on wind and everything else, I take that into consideration and stuff compared to what the capacity is actually written on the battery and stuff. And she flew great. So the next part of the video is you're going to see the actual flight. So I armed the motors and now about to do the takeoff roll, and I'll have this quadcopter in the air in a couple seconds. So here you go, essentially. In this particular area, I'm actually flying this in altitude mode, and I actually flew this the whole entire time without even realizing it in altitude mode because I forgot to flip the switch back up to GPS flight mode. Not a big deal for me because I've flown, of course, helicopters and fixed wings for many, many years, and pretty much you didn't have IMU compasses or GPS back then. It was essentially servo motors, receiver, and a transmitter. That's how you flew them. You know what I mean? So it doesn't bother me really. The only thing I really use GPS for is actually to lock the home point if I'm going long distances and stuff like that. So that way, just in case I do actually get lost or whatever the case is, I can hit the return to home, get it to come back to me where I kind of know where the area is, then take manual control back and land it myself. But either way it goes in this case here, because I'm keeping it visual line of sight the whole entire flight, didn't really need the GPS anyway, so not a big deal. But either way it goes, if I do lock the GPS in high interference area, I'll find an area where there's not as much interference, essentially where I can see it, and then make sure there's no tree or any obstacles in the way and stuff like that. And I'll set that as the home point. That way, then if I ever have to use the return to home and stuff, I can at least see it and then land it manually. But either way it goes, I keep it the whole entire time visual line of sight anyway in this, so it's not a big deal. Now, one thing I am testing is the camera as well as the battery too, because like I said, this drone I haven't flown in years. This is a Phantom 3 Standard. And honestly, she's doing pretty well. There is a little jelloing, as you can see, on the left bottom of the screen right now and stuff like that. So, I'm going to go and do 360s and kind of bank it here and there just to kind of test to see if I get any worse jelloing, how stable it is and stuff. I'm doing this all intentionally and stuff. And I'm just kind of looking around as well and stuff too. But either way it goes, she's handling like a champ. And even the jelloing, I noticed, kind of went away at this point. So wasn't that much. I kind of expected. I mean, she is an old bird, you know what I mean? But either way it goes, it's 180 feet up in the air. There is a little wind, not that much. It's not like heavy wind or anything like that. But there is some wind because I am having to counter drift here and there and stuff. But she flies nicely, you know what I mean? And for those that are looking to actually get into drones or whatever the case is, and you've flown helicopters before and stuff, go ahead and get one. It's pretty much the same type of flying and stuff like that. The only difference is, of course, the throttle and stuff. We're on a drone. It starts in the middle and stuff like that, and not all the way down. So that's just the only thing you need to learn. But other than that, you'll be able to fly it no problem. So either way, here you go. I'm just kind of looking around, testing the cameras, and I'm actually quite shocked on how good the image quality is for such a small sensor. Now, of course, at nighttime, these are not that great because the image sensor on the camera wasn't that big compared to the new MIDI, 3 Pros and above, where they start using large image sensors. Those do great at night. This is not one I would fly at night, of course, but for the daytime, even though the sun's going down, it's around 8 o'clock now, so it does pretty nice even for today, you know what I mean? It's not bad, it's nice and stable. There is a little jelloing here and there and stuff, but nothing severe, no waviness, no anything like that. And even years later, sitting in the box and stuff, it works perfect. No issues that I noticed whatsoever at all. You know what I mean? So I'm just, kind of playing around with it, enjoying the flight. Of course, I'm not even really looking at the screen. I'm actually just looking up in the air. Because one nice thing about these Phantoms is you can definitely see them visual line of sight even at 400 feet. I'm not kidding. I'm not lying when I say that. These are easy to spot in the air. And you can even see the orientation because the lights they put on under it makes it very easy to spot the orientation stuff because you got the green and red lights and stuff like that, so you'll be able to tell backwards and forward and everything else like that. So with the minis, no. You can get, once you start getting around 260 feet, it's a dot in the air and you're not going to be able to tell the orientation that it's in. The only way you'll be able to tell the orientation it's in is by looking at what the camera's pointed at, essentially flying at FPV and stuff. For anyone that says they can fly a Mini or Maverick at, visual line of sight at 400 feet and above, they're lying. You know what I mean? It's essentially a dot in the air, and I got pretty much 20/20 vision, so, I could definitely not see it once it gets above 260 feet and stuff like that. So either way it goes with these Phantoms, a different story. You can clearly see this thing in 400 feet. And a matter of fact, it was actually even too loud in some cases. I had it about right now in the air about 180 to 200 feet at times. I had to sometimes bring it up when I started seeing birds come around and stuff because I didn't want the birds to decide to go after it. So one of the tricks I'll do is I'll throttle up a little bit, and then the birds typically will fly the other direction and stuff because they're not going to try to chase that voice. When you do get birds following it, do not descend, ascend. You know what I mean? Because if you descend, the birds are going to take it as like prey and they will attack it. You know what I mean? Go up high and they can't catch it essentially, and they're just going to give up. That's what you want to do if you ever have to deal with birds. And typically what I like to do is I'll put shiny tape on it and stuff because anything that's reflective and stuff, birds don't like, and they'll kind of stay away from it essentially. But either way it goes, I'm just kind of, playing around with it, hovering here and there, and just looking around and stuff like that, and adjusting for drift and everything else, because I had it in altitude mode the whole entire time. I was kind of wondering why I was drifting here and there, but that was because it was in altitude mode the whole entire time. Either way it goes, even for altitude mode and stuff like that, even though if I let off the control, it'll drift kind of severely, you know what I mean? It still does pretty good, you know what I mean? But here you go, I'm just kind of flying over here and there, looking around, enjoying the camera and stuff like that. And she does pretty good, but the whole point of this flight was really just to drain the battery down and to test the discharge capacity and stuff like that. So I have a timer running, and I got about 19 minutes flight time. And, she did pretty good, and I'm considering the 19 minutes because I actually started the timer when I turned the aircraft on and stuff like that. Actually, the flight was probably a little over 17 minutes of actual time because it took a little over a minute or so for the aircraft to warm up and stuff because it has to warm up the IMU and so forth. But either way it goes, it was able to give me pretty much close to what the original OEM battery would have. And this battery was only at 93% when I put it in, and pretty much I discharged it down to 21% because once I started seeing the lights in the back of the aircraft start flashing and stuff like that, I brought it home and it brought it down at 20% exactly. So, and that's one thing about lipo packs, whether it's for your racing drones or any drones for that fact of matter, or even your helicopters or fixed wing aircrafts and stuff like that, you don't want to discharge the battery below 20%. You want to try to keep it above 20%, and you only want to charge it 100%, of course, when you're getting ready to actually fly it and stuff and take it for a flight. When you store them, keep the batteries around 50 to 60% at storage charge, because that's when the battery's going to be the most stable and your batteries won't puff up and pretty much will last you years and stuff if you do basic maintenance and stuff like that. And of course, always store your batteries and stuff like that, preferably outside an ammo case or something like that, or in a lipo safe bag or whatever the case is, because they can be quite dangerous if they do go up and stuff like that. If you watched any of the e-bike fires or any, the lipo battery pack fires and stuff, you'll know how dangerous they are. But either way it goes, this battery does pretty much what it states, so it's giving me what they claim, so they're not lying about it. But this battery was a little bit pricey. I just wanted to check to make sure that it does the flight time it claims to do, and that the actual capacity that's written on the battery is actually what it is. Of course, the other way I could have done that too was to put it on my discharge tester and just let it discharge down and stuff like that, and that'll tell me what the discharge capacity of the battery is. But in this case here, I wanted to fly this aircraft because it's been years since I've flown this anyway, so I wanted to kind of take it out for a nice long flight, of course keeping it visual line of sight. And I did keep this visual line of sight. I'm not lying about that, actually. I did. But either way it goes, she flies nicely. I'm over here flying it backwards here and there. I'm going around, looking around and stuff. And pretty much I'm going to stop yapping and let you enjoy the rest of the video, essentially.